Are you jonesing to start cooking but don't know which spices to have on hand? Well, let's talk about ways to get that spice pantry stocked.
Do you break into a sweat with even the thought of having company? I'm here to help. After trying just a few of my hosting tips, you'll be more than ready to say, come on over.
I have 6 tips on how to start a spice pantry. First, we want to start with our savories and our sweets. Let's go savory. Your very basic savory is going to be salt and pepper. But you might notice there are a lot of different salts and peppers out there. Well, there are kind of some basic ones. There's your basic iodized salt or table salt. You can use this for anything. Really, you can. But you will often see recipes call for kosher salt. What's the difference? Well, kosher salt is actually a coarser salt. It breaks down slower in things, and you might decide you need to do that. So having these 2 things on hand is fine. They're both very affordable. Then you might see sea salt. This is also coarse and it's very salty. So if you're looking for an edge on that saltiness, go for the sea salt. Now, if they're two big pieces, you can always get a grinder, and that leads us to the different kinds of peppers you can get. There are salt and pepper grinders that do the grinding for you.
It's on the grind, son.
So if a recipe calls for just straight up pepper, you can get your pepper already ground. This is just black pepper, coarse ground. And you can see in there that it's what you would use at the table. I have a giant thing of this because I do a lot of cooking. But you can also buy pepper corns. So if you have pepper corns, you can put them in a grinder and watch this. And you can adjust the grind. So this is kind of a medium grind. I love that, but some people that's too much pepper and they want it to be a more fine grind like this. Even though it's coarse ground, it is a little finer. So any of those work depending on what you want to use in your recipes. You might really like pepper, and so you might want to grind your own peppercorns. That's up to you. So that's the basic salt and pepper.
Not everybody want a pepper.
But then we need to look at other things that a lot of savory recipes will call for, and these are just basic. You may like the taste of garlic, but not want actual garlic. For that, you could either use garlic salt, but there is a garlic powder. You want to be a little careful with this because it is ground, and so you want to make sure that you don't overdo the powder. You may not like to cook with fresh onions or like the way that an onion feels in your mouth. I know people like that.
Ogres are like onions. They stink?
You might want to use this where the fresh onion kind of is forward, or it sticks out, or the feel of it in your mouth like a meatloaf. I often use this dried chopped onion because it will reconstitute in there, but it'll stay small. You can see them down here. I almost can't chop an onion this small, so this is a really good way to do that. So those are very, very basic. You can get by with any recipe with just those items. And you can throw in other ones as you want to, like paprika. Paprika is an extra spicy spice, and you may want to do just a little bit of it to just kind of kick up the flavor. There are all different kinds of paprikas, smoked, regular, chipotle. So you could do a little bit of experimenting with these, and they're not terribly expensive.
And the lucky spice is paprika!
But then let's talk about the sweet side of things. If you like to bake, you're going to have some basic sweet spices, and they are cinnamon. And this is ground cinnamon. There are also cinnamon sticks, but you want the ground cinnamon. There are cloves. These are whole cloves, but there's also ground cloves. Ginger, nutmeg, and vanilla. With those sweet spices, you can make just about any baked thing.
This is a bowling ball, and this is a cake.
Now, sometimes you will see something that calls for allspice. And if you have allspice on hand, it's actually a combination of cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg. So if you're running low or you're out of nutmeg, but it calls for it and you have allspice, you have nutmeg. So don't be afraid to mess around a little bit with those when you don't exactly have everything on hand. Now, let's go to another category.
Hey, where's my food?
Where's my food for 1,000?
You can buy pre-mixed spices, and this is fantastic if you just want a little bit of flavor and you don't want to mess with all this. For instance, this is a Mediterranean herb blend. I really like this.
Is the food good in grease? I said, sir, take a look at me.
If you're making a Mediterranean dish, that's where you want to go. How about if you want to do a salt-free dish? We messed around with this for a little bit of time just to see if we liked it. This is a Mrs. Dash. She has all different kinds of blends. And this one is a Southwest Chipotle. Gives a little kick without the salt. I love to use an Italian blend because it has the savory spices I want. Stuff like rosemary and thyme and sage and basil. It's all in here already very finely chopped and ready to go. So you could use that instead. Don't want to measure all the other ones. Here's a zesty Italian. You can see I'm down to the end of that. Emerald puts out a Bayou Blast. We have used this many times. It has wonderful natural spices to give it a kick. I assure you there's Chipotle seasonings in here. Also, you can buy them in packs. Here's a zesty Italian mix. Guess what? You can make your own taco seasoning, or you can just buy a packet of it. They've already done it for you and just add it to taste. If you don't like to make brown gravy, there's a packet for that. You can get au jus. There are many packet blends that you can have on hand if you don't want to mess with measuring out all the other savory spices. It will save you time and it will save you money.
Mr. Harcourt, time is money.
Now that you have your spice pantry started, what do you do with them? Well, they do look kind of cool in these bowls and sitting out here, but you probably don't want that. You want to put them away in a cool, dark place, because that's the way you maintain their freshness. So if you have them in the sun, if you have them in heat, they're going to start clumping together and start drying out and they lose their freshness. Now they are already dried, aren't they? So we want to keep them as fresh as possible, which brings me to the next point. Do spices expire? Well, on many of these, you will look on the bottom and it will say use by. Does that mean that it has expired? No. What it means is it was the freshest if you used it by that date. But you can go ahead and use it. It just may not be as strong. If it's a cheap spice like salt or pepper or one of these smaller containers, I would go ahead and get a fresh one. If you use this a lot, you probably have fresh ones. But if you don't, and it's from like the 1980s, you people know who I'm talking about. You've been in their spice pantry and you're like, 1980s.
People in the 80s were weird.
Go ahead and throw it out. You know what? Perfect Christmas gift. Buy them new spices. So you can check those dates, but don't stress over them. You can just notice it, use it, and get fresh ones the next time.
Give you a fresh start.
And this is probably the most important spice information I can give you. Learn to make substitutions. I do not run to the store for a spice a recipe calls for and I don't have it on hand. Like, ever. What I will do is I will go online and see if I can substitute. And it happens all the time to even me.
That's disappointing.
These are basic spice groups, but sometimes it might call for a smoked paprika. And I think, do I really need a smoked paprika? Couldn't I just use paprika? Or couldn't I use the chipotle paprika? Yeah, the answer is yes, I can. You don't have to have that. Let's say something calls for a lemon pepper. Do you have to run out and get lemon pepper? No, you can use pepper and then you can grate the lemon peel and use that with it. You just want to make sure you keep tasting it along the way and make sure it's not too lemon forward. So always get online and look for a substitution. It will work out. So as you can see, spices are a hit in the Come On Over house. We love to cook, and so we love to collect spices.
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
So when you're ready to start cooking, use these 6 tips to stock up on that spice pantry. Let's start stalking that. Let's start stalking people. And then we'll stalk them for spices to start our spice pantry.
Start stalking.
No, that's never going to work. That's not what I was going to say, but it came out fine. If a recipe calls for just straight up pepper, can't find it. Blend, it is a Mediterranean, this one is a Mediterranean herb blend. Mediterranean? Sounds like a terrarium for in the ocean or the sea. Okay. If you're making a meditation dish, I almost said.
Come on over. Now go make someone feel special today.